Hey there, folks. This is Rita.
This is Amanda.
And you're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast about women and some other folks that you've probably never heard of.
But you should have.
And today you will.
We did it.
We did it. That was fucking awesome.
So I have a question for you. Obviously, the world is on fire, specifically the United States.
Yes.
I saw this person, a white person, on Twitter who posted a really long thread. Full disclosure, did not read it because I read the first tweet and I thought, is it though? This person wrote that the people doing what they're doing and other like Trumpers and conservatives and whatever don't actually believe what they're saying. That was the thesis statement.
So everything that they were shouting on the news and everything, that they don't actually believe it.
Yes.
Okay.
This person's point was they don't actually believe any of it. They know it's all not real. They know, and they're doing it anyway because of basically of white supremacy. Right. Knowingly, though. Mm-hmm. Keyword. What are your thoughts on that?
Knowingly. So just basically using all of this as an excuse to finally shove their whiteness.
That's the person's
power play as
thesis.
Much as possible. Huh. I don't believe that's 100%. I think there's some people there that do. And maybe there's some people there that don't.
Yeah, I definitely think that there were people there and continue to be who are like full-fledged fucking Nazi, white supremacist, KKK people who like know full well what they're really doing.
Yeah, the door is open, so might as well slip in.
Yeah, and we've known that for a long time. I feel like, you know, we've been like sort of like dismissing the big deal about white supremacists, but those of us who've been paying attention have known that those people exist pretty much forever.
Yeah.
But like certainly since the Oklahoma City bombing, which was in the 90s, we've known that these people, especially when the internet came about, they've been finding each other on the internet. Like that part where there's like a section of people who are like that. Yes. Mm-hmm. But I grew up in rural Montana. And
yes, you did.
When I was younger, we had regular internet, regular television. We had cable.
Okay.
And so we got, maybe like 30 channels total. And then my junior year of high school, my parents got a satellite dish.
Oh, never ending, like 800 channels probably, right?
And guess which one became their favorite?
What?
Fox News.
Okay. I had a feeling it was that.
Prior to that, we watched CNN in my house. And after Fox News, my family became different people. People I couldn't talk to, I couldn't get along with, we couldn't see eye to eye on anything. And I'm not saying that as in like, it was a little bit. It was not a little bit. It was
a lot.
It upended my mother. It made her into a monster. And it's not like she and I got along really well before that, but this is different. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll give you an example. When I came home from college, so again, we got satellite my junior year. My freshman year of college was when 9/11 happened. And after that, it was as if she had just fallen off a cliff and into the most rabid, Muslim, anti-everything.
I did see that with other people, not personally in my own home, but I saw that with other people.
She was scared shitless, like legitimately scared. Like one night we were sitting, I had come home from college and we were eating dinner and the TV was on Fox News while we were eating dinner. And they had that threat level thing that just continuously scrolled at the bottom, which they did after 9/11, constantly threat level. Today is yellow, threat level, orange. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I was listening to, I think it was probably Bill O'Reilly. It might have been Sean Hannity. Either one of them it could have been. But whoever it was like just ranting and raving. And I was like, I just sort of started laughing. And my mom was like, what is so funny? This is serious. We're under attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started laughing. I said, no, we're not. They're just scaring you because it's easier to manipulate you if you're afraid.
Exactly. Fear is one of the most powerful tools that media and politicians and people who want to sway you can use.
My stepdad, to his credit, said, I agree. He was like, I agree. They are trying to, he was like, that threat level thing at the bottom, who fucking gives a shit about that? You know, he didn't use those words because he didn't swear that much. But, you know, he was basically like, it's not real. It's based in fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that he met me halfway because he certainly was very much indoctrinated as well. And within a year of that, the next time I came home, my mom had gotten satellite radio. We also got the internet my senior year of high school.
Wow.
So when I came home from college, within the course of like from basically 1999 to 2005 was before my very eyes witnessing my mother become indoctrinated and radicalized. As a person who had prior to that been a relatively normal person.
Yeah.
And like I came home one time, I'll never forget this. I walked in the front door and we had a television in our kitchen. So our house is kind of an open concept when you first walked in. There's a dining room, kitchen, open area. Mm-hmm. So there was the TV on in there. She was sitting at her desk in the next room reading the Drudge Report while the satellite radio was playing Fox News in the bathroom, and her television was also on Fox News in the bedroom.
It's like, might as well get an IV and put it into your veins, why don't you?
Exactly. And then she started subscribing to Newsmax, so the magazine would come. I mean, it was insane. And that is what I have seen happen to a lot of people. And I'm seeing it in our generation via the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And these people are not, like, 10 years ago would have been relatively normal people that you could have sat down and had a beer with.
Yeah.
And now they're radical white supremacists. They wouldn't call themselves that.
No.
And they're not the kind who, like, they're not Stormfront, you know what I mean? But those people, they absolutely 100% believe what they're seeing and reading.
Yeah.
They believe it to the core of their soul.
And I'm wondering, from what I see from my angle, I'm having a really hard time understanding that belief system and how that works. I can't imagine just changing so much in how I think about people, think about my system. But like, I usually take a step or two and like really analyze things. I'm like, okay, I need to think logically and not think from emotion. I need to think from, logical, also think social. Not everybody thinks or feels or looks the same way I do. So I have to think of a well-rounded, I go through a system of thought. This is just like, basically like, here's the gasoline, here's the match, let's set it all on fire. It's just so full of rage and so full of fear, and almost like people really do believe that they're going to get everything taken out from underneath them.
They absolutely believe it with their entire body and soul.
And that's such a human instinct to freak the fuck out.
And to protect yourself.
It's like rats in a barrel, basically. And to me, I'm like, whoa, you all are going to eat each other alive.
No, they're going to eat us alive, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think
and then they'll turn on each other eventually.
I was going to say, they would even turn on each other. I think it's probably already starting to happen. And I don't understand it because I don't think like that. I can't afford to think like that.
When you were talking about like taking the steps to like evaluate and analyze and things like that, here's what I'll say I watched happen to my mother. And again, this is anecdotal. It is not evidentiary in terms of like, statistics and whatever. I'm telling you that I watched somebody become degraded over time. Mm-hmm. And then it happened to my aunt, who is the kindest, sweetest, most open-hearted. Like, my mom was kind of always a little bit cunty, so it was like, okay, I could see her, like, falling for, like, rage stick, But my aunt was not like that. Like, she was like in love with Dolly Parton and read poetry and liked to watch romance movies. She was not the kind of person that you would think would fall for this kind of garbage. And she did. Not as bad as my mother, but certainly she did. And I watched them have their critical thinking skills eroded. Because when you just continuously hear someone say over and over and over again that we're the only source where you can get real news, everyone else is biased, everyone else is going to paint this portrait of this other side, they're not actually giving you both sides. They're giving you watered down versions. They're mainstream media, right?
They're giving you the buzzwords
and they train you. I sat around and listened to enough Fox News in my house to know that they're like literally training you like you're a dog to see things the way they want you to see them.
Absolutely.
So when my mom would occasionally flip over to CNN, she'd be like, see how they did that? Well, she was trained to look at it through these lenses that were completely skewed.
What I've noticed, like, especially with Fox News and what I've seen, I can only stand it for so long. It really does play into, and I feel especially for white people, what you want to hear at this moment in time. I feel like white fragility is very, very present. And all the white people don't like to hear that we're not bad. We want to do good things, and I'm a good person. I've raised my family. I've done this and that. And so then they say, hey, yes, you did. But look over here. Someone's trying to make you feel bad about yourself. That's not okay. And oh, yeah, it's not. Yeah. Well, look over here. They're trying to also take this from you. They can't do that. Oh, no, they can't. It's just leading people down through their insecurities into this fucking black hole.
It's not new either.
No.
This stuff started, like I said, I'm talking about when I came home from college 20 years ago to see my mother slowly slipping down this hill. But I remember, like, even back then, the big, like, push on Fox News was the PC police, which was basically people, marginalized people finally standing up and being able to say, it's not okay for you to say this, this, and this. That's discriminatory. It's racist. It's oppressive. It's homophobic, right? And then the defense of that being, ooh, are you the PC police? And it became uncool to be, you know what I mean? It was, that's like, I watched that start back then, and I guess my problem with this person writing this is that I'm not trying to absolve people of their sins. I think every single person who participated in these things has a responsibility to be accountable for what they've done.
Yeah.
And the thoughts they've had and the actions they've participated in. But I think it's oversimplifying and myopic to think that they don't actually believe it.
I feel that's almost also excusing the behavior of, for they know not what they do. And it's like, yeah, they fucking do.
Well, so you're on the side of the OP, the original poster, who said, like, no, they don't actually believe this stuff. They're just doing it because they're white, whatever her original thing was.
I believe they do know I do think that they believe in what they're doing and what they're hearing, what they're being taught.
I think we have a long way to go in our country of understanding that radicalization isn't just for brown people. Like, I'm hearing a lot of people say that, like, to me, that specific poster who was trying to be, like, very, I don't know, like, hey, they're really white supremacists and they don't believe anything. They're just, they're just saying they believe this stuff. And I'm like, guys, people can be radicalized and still be American and white. This is an example of radicalization that has done terrifically. This is how people become part of terrorist groups. It's how people become Nazis. It is when they buy into propaganda and they believe and swallow those lies wholesale and they act on them.
And they run with it. Yeah.
And that doesn't absolve them of their guilt or responsibility or accountability for what they've done. What it does do is it gives us a window into how it happened. And for us to shut off that part where we're analyzing how they've become radicalized, we're failing. That's why history repeats itself. Because we're not taking the time to sit down and actually study how are they being radicalized? How do we stop it from happening while it's happening? Instead of later on having like think pieces and books written about it. Fuck that. We're in the middle of it now. Let's stop it now.
Yeah.
We've been witnessing the increasing radicalization of these people for years before our very eyes.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot is being done about it. There have been some terrific writers and journalists who've been writing about it and vociferously talking about it, but they're not getting through to the people who actually need to do something about it.
Do you think part of why nothing's being done and why people also just don't know what to do is because most of these people are white?
Oh, absolutely. We know. I mean, I feel like as a country, we understand that radicalization can happen. But we understand it in the context outside of our own country. It doesn't happen here, obviously, because we have freedom and democracy. And for the people who are currently so brainwashed into believing all of this garbage, this nonsense about stolen elections and deep states and all this just absolute wild stories.
If you see a lot of these people like being interviewed on the news, I think wild is the right word to say. They're like insane in this frenzy.
Yeah, they're frenzied and frantic in their faces.
Yeah.
And even when they're not in the middle of storming a Capitol.
Yeah.
Even when they're just at a Trump rally.
It's just yelling and screaming and spitting, and it's like, whoa.
I mean, if masks are a conspiracy, you've gone over the deep end. Like, I think that I'd like to just for our listeners and for anybody who's interested in learning more about this, I think everybody right now on their phones needs to go ahead and click that subscribe button next to the Bundyville podcast, which is about the Clive Bundy, the brothers who took over the Malheur Wildlife Refuge with those farmers. And our very own local Matt Shea helped them organize it. So he plays some roles in there too. But the woman who put that show together is a journalist, Leah Sotil. I think that's how you say her last name. I've actually only read it and never heard it pronounced. I'm sure she says it on the podcast, and clearly I don't keep it. But Leah Sotil has been writing about white extremism and white radicalization for years. And her podcast, Bunnyville, is a great deep dive into how this is happening. And she's continued that work since then. And just, last month or 2 months ago, wrote a very, very detailed, well-researched piece on the radicalization around the election.
Oh, wow.
And so I really highly recommend you go and read those things, because it is important that we don't dismiss these people as either crazy and therefore they don't know what they're talking about, or two, so evil that they are monsters. Do I think they're monstrous? Yes. But I think they're human beings who have been whittled away at by a very sophisticated machine of propaganda.
Yeah.
And I've spent too much time studying the Holocaust and World War II not to know that it's not just monsters who become Nazis.
Yeah.
It's your neighbors who turn a blind eye when you get taken out of your house. You know?
Yeah.
It's the factory worker who just decides not to notice that they got a new pair of shoes they didn't buy.
Oh, that was a deep one. And definitely, so what is the podcast called again? The
Bundyville.
Bundyville. Let's make sure to put that in our Instagram.
In our show notes. We'll put it in our show notes. We'll talk about it on Instagram and Facebook.
And so how big was the Twitter feed from this one comment?
Well, so the original poster put like a thread, and then there were thousands of retweets and comments and things like that. And I was like,
yikes.
I cannot dig through this because it'll just make me mad.
Yeah.
Because I do think that like the original poster had good intent, which was to really highlight the connections and the correlations between these actions and legitimate white supremacist organizations. I think those connections are absolutely there, but not every single person who was at the Capitol would identify as a member of one of those groups, or would even think that they're related in any way. And that's, again, another function of the way propaganda works. You can compartmentalize that I'm not like that guy.
Yeah.
When you really are.
I'm not that over there. I am this over here. So therefore you can justify who you're supporting and who you're voting for.
And it's shades of gray, obviously. To those of us on the outside, we understand that there's just not a lot of difference between your Donald Trumps of the world and your Richard Spencers of the world. They're versions of the same person. But other people will not see it that way. The people that follow Donald Trump do not see it that way.
No. Oof.
Yeah, I know. Heavy shit.
Heavy shit.
The world's on fire, but we're going to extinguish it. At least for a moment, with a cool story, I imagine.
Yes. You ready?
Yeah. Who do you got?
You know who Emmy Noether is?
No, not a clue.
She's a German-born mathematician who made important contributions to abstract algebra.
Okay, this is going to go right off my ass.
That was my first question. How are you at math?
Okay, I actually just talked about this with students today.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, I had this idea when I was younger that I just blanket bad at math. But that actually wasn't true. It just took me a little longer to understand algebra. But for the most part, algebra was like the thing I got. Up until we got to like certain things. Like I'm not good at graphs, like algebra with line graphs and stuff. I'm like, no, thank you. But I'm really bad at things like geometry, like angles. And so I couldn't build a house. You wouldn't want my house if I built it for you.
Geometry was a little bit more up my alley because I'm very, I like definitive measurements. That I can work with. It's like putting building blocks in my hand and I can put things together. We start talking about theory and all these other things. I was like, well, I don't have that kind of mind that can, I guess, bend that way. I'm more of a straight line kind of person.
I'm solidly first half of Algebra 1. So, a good solid first half of Algebra 1 I could still do.
I never really applied myself too much, especially in high school, which was funny because my favorite teacher was my math teacher. And shout out to Mr. Beyruti. He just made the class really fun. And he had that really good line of being playful. But then like when you got down to work, you like really excited to work. Like that's rarity in a teacher. Get you to actually want to try. But I always just thought, I'm not that good at it. So I'd play with it a little bit, but I never applied myself. And finally, junior year, he told me, you have it there. He's like, you understand a lot of stuff that a lot of the other kids don't understand. He's like, I want you to push a little harder. And he goes, and I'm going to set a bar for you. And I, if you agree, we're going to meet this bar. So he was giving me extra work. And at the end of junior year, I was able to go into advanced calculus.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I had no idea that I could understand that.
Huh.
It's all out of my brain now as an adult just because of time and stuff like that. But I didn't know that I could get to that point. And I was like, shit, what if I had applied myself freshman year, and not just waited till the end of my senior year?
Damn, Rita, you could have been an engineer.
Wow. You know how you take like those tests where they tell you what you would be good at? and you test like all day. And then what it said for me was a mathematician. And I was like, they're stupid. This means the test is wrong.
I wanna build a time machine just so I can go back and make sure Rita becomes an engineer. Because like how much you love building plans and all this stuff, you could have for real been a like legit, because engineering takes a lot of math.
Yeah.
So like, you know, a lot of people have a spatial brain, but they can't actually do the complicated math to be an engineer. Knowing that you could do both of those things, you'd be like,
I probably could have built stuff.
Kind of rich.
Darn it. And so I always, that was something I'd always wished that maybe I should pushed a little harder. And I love architecture and I love things that are detailed in that way. And so, yeah, I missed the boat on that one, but
it's never too late. We've learned that from some of our
hard.
folks.
So she was born Amalie Emmy Noether on March 23rd, 1882. This is a while ago.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah. Obviously, she went by her middle name. Amalie was her mother's and her grandmother's name, so I think she just wanted to have like her own name. She was born and raised in the town of Erlangen, and she had 3 younger brothers. Her family lived very comfortable, upper middle class lifestyle. Emmy came from a naturally mathematical family. Her father, his name was Max Noether. He was a distinguished math professor at the University of Heidelberg and Erlangen. So I'm going to try my best with this German stuff.
I mean, I think you're doing great. Keep it up.
Her father's life was all about education, and he encouraged all of his children to push themselves academically. Emmy had access to some education because her father was a professor and they did have money, but she didn't really shine in any of her studies like her brothers did. While growing up, people said that Emmy was very clever. She was a fast thinker. She was really good at solving brain teasers, which I do love those too, and like riddles and stuff. She was a little quiet because she did have a lisp when she spoke, and she was a little nearsighted, resulting in having to wear some bulky glassware, which I'm very, very akin to.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that
4th
problem.
grade.
Mine was 3rd grade, and they've just gotten thicker ever since.
Oh, yeah. Remember when the doctor had to like specially shave the sides of my glasses so that they wouldn't look like bottle caps? He was like, we're going to make this work for you.
Yeah, I'm so glad they've improved that now, because now they have the high index lenses.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what I get, so that you don't see how thick they are.
Yeah, it's a blessing. She ended up studying English, French. Her mother played piano, so she also studied piano. She didn't like it very much. Subjects that were more socially acceptable for a girl at the time, of course, she was placed in a finishing school to be finished, to learn how to cook and to clean. Yeah, we hate that. She did excel at speaking French and English, which led her to taking exams to be able to teach the languages. Her results qualified her to be a teacher, and this was in 1900. She was 18 years old.
Wow.
So she was able to become a teacher. She's right on the cusp of deciding, do I want my future to go this way and be a teacher? She'd have financial stability. She'd be able to provide for herself. Or does she want to go this way, which was the mathematical way? She loved what her father did. Obviously, it was all around her while she was growing up. But she was not going to be guaranteed a good solid financial life if she was going to try to go down this road.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't really know like what mathematicians do other than teach.
And at this time, there was no room for women to be teaching mathematics.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. She did it anyway. So I don't think she probably could have done this if her father wasn't who he was.
Yeah.
I think she did have a leg up on that.
She had some connections.
Yeah. She's chose instead to continue her studies at the University of Erlangen. And that's where her father taught. The mixed-sex education was not allowed at the time, so Emmy had to do something that was completely unfair. She would be present in class like any other student. She would do all of the work. She would study just like everyone else, but she had to agree to less participation so she had no voice during the class. She had to get special permission from each professor whose classes that she wanted to sit in, and she would have to audit the classes, which I'm not sure if you know what auditing a class means. Yes,
I do. It means you have to pay for it and take it, but not get any credit for it.
She got 0 credit.
Oh my God.
She was there informally. She had to audit every single class. So Emmy continued her education this way, auditing her classes along with one other woman in a school of 986 male students and an all-male staff. Some said it was 986. Some said it was over 1,000, like 1,500 or something. It's just her and this other gal. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, to say it was hard was, I think, obviously an understatement. She studied at the university till 1904. And this I'm kind of like, I don't understand. So she decided to take the final exams. So even if you audit the classes, you can still test.
Yeah, you do all of the work. You just don't get a credit or a grade.
So you can pass the test and then, but still nothing.
Nothing.
Fuck. So she did take the final exams. She passed with scores that would have granted her the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. She then transferred to the University of Göttingen. It's got one of those umlauts, one of those little double dots over the O. It's a world-renowned center for mathematical research. Once again, she had to audit all of her classes. She was able to...
They must not have allowed women in. And so in order for her to like take the classes, she had to just audit them.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
She was able to attend lectures by astronomers, brilliant mathematicians who were all discussing and discovering things such as calculus variations, mathematical physics, geometry, etc. She returned to the University of Erlangen the following year. Women were finally allowed to be admitted.
So she could like take classes and get whole credits for them.
There. She decided to fully dedicate her time to mathematics. She studied for the next 3 years under the guidance of a Jewish German professor named Paul Gordon. He was known as the king of invariant theory. No idea what invariant theory is.
No, I don't have any idea.
It's a branch of abstract algebra. And this was right up Emmy's alley because the way that she approached mathematics was abstract. It was out of the box. It wasn't any definitive lines. In 1907, she wrote her dissertation on algebraic invariance, and it was very well received. Later on, Emmy admitted she didn't think it was that good. She was like, it was crap.
Well, everybody does that when they get older and they know more. They look back at and they're like, what was I thinking?
Did you ever do one of those?
A thesis?
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think of it now? Oh, the full head tilt back laugh.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't want to read it again. Now, I wrote about my senior thesis of my undergrad. My capstone was about... This is actually very funny because now I find it to be prescient and very true.
Okay.
I wrote about how J.K. Rowling believed herself to be writing feminist characters who were actually anti-feminist.
I'd like to read it.
I was in my last semester. I took my capstone was like medieval and fantasy literature.
Interesting.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. We read The Lord of the Rings and The Mists of Avalon and Harry Potter.
Ooh.
It was a terrific class.
Well, even though she thought it was crap later, she graduated with her PhD. Her professors said she's brilliant. It can't be denied. Many of them thought you need to be teaching. Like there's just like no way around it.
And clearly teaching higher level math.
Yes. But she still was not allowed to teach men because she was a woman. Mm. So the university decided the best thing that they could do for her was take her on as her father's assistant. Yeah.
Oh, I don't like this.
Yeah, one big shitty catch. Yeah. They couldn't give her a title and she wasn't going to get paid.
She doesn't even get paid?
No.
I hate it.
So she worked as a researcher. She even occasionally substituted for her father's class if he was like ill or too tired, because he's getting older.
Yeah.
Other professors were pushing for the university to add her on staff, that she should be teaching, but they had no luck like convincing the higher ups.
That's probably because they're like, well, if we let one of them do it, we've got to let more of them do it.
They're going to get emboldened.
They're going to get emboldened.
Well, she continued to just dive into her research. She was determined to write and publish her works despite what the university like not recognizing her as a teacher. So in 1910, she published an extension of her thesis work. Her mentor, Paul Gordon, retired around this time, and a new mathematician would take his place. His name was Ernst Fischer. Fisher had a really strong influence on Emmy, introducing her to new bodies of work, especially the work of a brilliant mathematician named David Hilbert. Hilbert's work would lead Emmy down the path where she extended his methods and began engaging in abstract algebra. And this is the field of mathematics that Emmy would make groundbreaking contributions to. So Emmy and Fisher were like two kids in a candy shop when it came to math. They were like totally just would talk for hours after lectures and just keep on going with theories and ideas that they had. There's a photo of a postcard that she sent him where she was writing abstract algebra and asking him questions, and every single piece of that postcard, she like started this way and then she went upside down and she was writing the other way and then she wrote on the front, just like trying to get all of her questions on this one tiny postcard to him. In 1915, Emmy's work impressed David Hilbert so much, she was invited to return to the University of Göttingen by Hilbert and Felix Klein. They wanted her to work there, so they were trying to get her an admission on as staff. But she was blocked by the philosophical faculty. They were like,
The Department of Philosophy was like, we must not allow a woman.
I can just imagine them going, woman. So they insisted women should not become Privatdozenten, which means it's like a title, which means a teacher of a higher level, basically. And it's like giving the title professor or doctor, and they didn't think that she should get it. They said, what will our soldiers think when they return to the university and find that they are required to learn at the feet of a woman?
What will they think? They'll think, hey, she's pretty smart. I mean, that's what I would think.
Hilbert responded in her defense, and he said, I do not see that the sex of the candidate is an argument against her admission. After all, we're a university, not a bathhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Good
point. Good point. I like that.
During her first years teaching there, she was not given an official position or title. Once again, she's not getting paid.
What?
Yeah. Her family had to support her by paying for her room and board. To be able to have her teach without getting in trouble, her lectures were often advertised under Hilbert's name, and he would put Emmy as she was there to provide assistance, but then he would give her the floor and let her teach anyway.
I feel like that's a little unethical. I mean, all of it's unethical. I mean, to have somebody do work that you're not paying them for, that, I mean, that was obviously unethical, but being like, hey, come to my class, it's actually going to be taught by her. That seems real not good.
Maybe causing a little bit of a troubling time. In 1915, Albert Einstein published his general theory of relativity, and Emmy began applying her invariance work to some of his theories. So while doing this, Emmy discovered and proved a theorem that shook up the mathematics community. The theorem that she proved, later named rightly the Notres Theorem, states that every differentiable symmetry of the action of a physical system has a corresponding conservation law. I looked at this freaking theorem I looked and I was like
a foreign language to you?
oh, it was like not even numbers. They were like shapes. And I was like, I don't understand this at all. It's way out there. She's going into advanced calculus, physics, geometry. I wouldn't even know where to start to try to explain what it is.
Yeah, it's okay. I probably wouldn't get it.
But to the people who knew what it was huge. Physicist Christopher Hill wrote in his book called Symmetry and the Beautiful Universe that this theorem is possibly on par with Pythagorean's theorem, which I mean, we all knew in school.
We all had to do the Pythagorean theorem.
Yep, which I don't remember what it was, do you?
Oh, I don't remember the actual theorem. No.
I think there was a triangle in it, wasn't there?
There was definitely a triangle in it.
Okay. That's all I remember.
Thanks, everyone. We're here for your math lecture.
The connections that Emmy forged are critical to modern physics, said Dr. Lisa Randall, who's a professor of theoretical particle physics and cosmology at Harvard.
Yeah, just Harvard.
Energy, momentum, and other quantities we take for granted gain remaining meaning and even greater value when we understand how these qualities follow from symmetry in time and space. Dr. Randall recalled that when she was in college, she happened to learn that the author of the Notres Theorem was a she. She said it was striking, even exciting and inspirational. I was really surprised by my reaction. Like, she's there studying, and then to see this woman back in the early 1900s.
Yeah, hundreds of years ago.
So her paper on the theorem was submitted and accepted to the Royal Society of Science in Göttingen in 1918. She was 36 at this time. She's my age.
Yeah. So, I mean...
Where's my theorem?
Unfortunately, she ain't got any coin to show for herself, but like, it's pretty cool that by that point that she basically solved a new or discovered a new thing in math.
In 1919, things started changing. The university finally allowed Emmy to proceed with what they call habilitation, which is eligibility to become a professor and go for tenure.
Okay. So it's like tenure track.
What's that?
That's here in the United States. It would be the position is a tenure track position, which means you can eventually apply for tenure.
Oh, okay.
And some people get denied. They'll like be a professor for years and apply for their tenure and not actually get it.
I wonder why they get denied.
Sometimes it's like because they have to meet certain qualifications, like a certain number of publishing credits, certain number of research, like certain amount of research, and it changes depending on the school and the department and whatever. So sometimes they might be like, that publishing credit doesn't count. Try again later. Yeah.
What if you're at the end of your rope?
I know, you're like, I've been doing this for 30 years.
She finally was on staff at the end of 1919, and better yet, she's finally fucking getting paid. She began to work in algebra in 1920. In collaboration with W. Schmilde, she published a paper about the theory of ideals in which they defined left and right ideals in a ring. So like this theory she's creating is like, it has to do with measuring surfaces. And so what she did was creating theories of like these ringed surfaces, because a ring's very complicated. I mean, imagine trying to find the surface area of a donut.
Yeah.
So this work was defined as revolutionary. The publication gave rise to the term the Noetherian ring and the naming of several other mathematical objects, which were called Noetherian, which was based on her last name. Her lectures and personal one-on-one work with students and her colleagues gave birth to mathematical ideas that may never have come if she had given up. It was said about Emmy that she had a reputation for constant helpfulness and patient guidance with all of her students. Sometimes she'd be a little rude if they were being kind of dumb. Like she would be like, "You need to stop."
That's a me problem.
Like, I expect better from you.
Yeah.
Like you're being dumb right now.
I would get like be like, "Dude, you just did this right 5 seconds ago."
I feel like she was helpful because she knew what it was like.
Yeah.
to be held down and pushed back and
to
not
be
given.
questioned.
And so for her to be able to put that forward and say, no, I'm going to be helpful to my students. I like that. Her students said that she would always be up for talking about math, that she'd be eating her lunch and start gesturing wildly because she'd get so excited that she'd like spill on herself and she'd like wipe herself off real quick and then keep going and like spill on herself again and just keep wiping herself off.
She's like the nutty professor, like for real.
Things took a turn when World War II began.
Oh no. Is she Jewish?
She's Jewish.
Fuck!
In April of 1933, Emmy, like many other Jews, received a notice from the Prussian Ministry of Sciences, Art, and Public Education that they would be removing her as a teacher.
I imagine that was also one of the things that held her back from being a professor.
Probably. For a brief period of time, she tried to continue to teach her students in her own home, but it began to get more and more dangerous.
Yeah.
She even had students that were showing up in her class wearing Nazi, the brown shirts. So it was very intimidating. I mean, could you imagine that coming into your classroom?
Yes, I can. Because
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
hey, MAGA hats coming around.
No. She eventually was forced to flee Germany. With the help of Albert Einstein, she was given a job at the Bryn Mawr College, where she said she felt deeply appreciated, as she had never been in Germany. Just 2 years after she moved to the U.S., Emmy had surgery for a tumor that she had on her pelvis. When they opened her up, they found an enormous cyst that they didn't know was there. She ended up dying from complications of the surgery. She caught an infection and she died 4 days later. She was only 53.
That sounds like endometriosis.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's what endometriosis does.
They said it was an ovarian cyst too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're like I had cysts and that's what I had to have surgery for.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes like basically even now today, a lot of people with uteruses don't get the treatment that they need or deserve because their pain isn't taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Their symptoms are not taken seriously. The fact that the disease of endometriosis has basically no research on it. The last research paper I read about involved determining whether or not men found women who complained about endometriosis attractive or not.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. There's like no point to that.
Right. So instead of putting money towards, I don't know, trying to find treatments and cures and preventions,
Yeah.
we're learning about why it's gross for men to have to deal with people who have problems.
Who actually have the problem.
Yeah.
Well, too, the cyst that they ended up finding, they said it was huge. Like it was like the size of a grapefruit.
Oh
so I'm
my
wondering
God.
like how much pain she was probably in.
Because like endometriosis continues to get worse if you never have children.
She had no children.
Exactly. So that's like the cysts get worse and more prevalent and bigger unless you have a hysterectomy.
Ugh.
Which is a major surgery that, like, if I walked in tomorrow and I said I want to have a hysterectomy and I had a male doctor, they'd probably not let me have one.
They would deny you.
Until I was out of childbearing age. Even if it would solve my problems.
Blah. Well, she did pass away from the surgery. Her mathematics community was devastated. And not only the loss of their friend and their teacher, but whatever work she wasn't able to finish.
Yeah.
She was cremated and buried at the cloisters at Bryn Mawr College. She did have a nephew where she left all of her belongings and her money to him. Her work continues to be relevant for the development of theoretical physics and mathematics, and she is consistently ranked as one of the greatest mathematicians in the 20th century.
Cool.
In a letter to the New York Times, Albert Einstein said this about her. In the judgment of the most competent living mathematicians, Fraulein Noether was the most significant creative mathematical genius thus far produced since the higher education of women began. In the realm of algebra, in which the most gifted mathematicians have been busy for centuries, she discovered methods which have proved of enormous importance in the development of the present-day younger generation of mathematicians. So she gave a huge, huge chunk to the future.
Yeah. It's cool to have her remembered by Einstein, because every single one of us from the time we're like, 3 know who Einstein is.
Absolutely.
So we should also know who Emmy is.
The Association for Women in Mathematics holds a Noether lecture to honor women in mathematics every year. A street in her hometown has been named after her and her father, Max. In 2013, the European Physical Society established the Emmy Noether Distinction for Women in Physics Award. Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics annually awards an Emmy Noether Visiting Fellowship to outstanding female theoretical physicists. Perimeter Institute is also the home to the Emmy Noether Council. I got most of my information from The Mathematician You Never Heard Of by Natalie Angier for the New York Times, Britannica.com, and a paper written by Louise Greenstein and Paul Campbell called Women of Mathematics, a Bibliographic Sourcebook, and a little bit of Wikipedia to find out like when she was born and stuff. Wikipedia had so much on her and her father too. Huh. It was crazy. Well, but I was like, I don't know how much of this I can trust. So
I love using Wikipedia to find the real sources. I just scroll down to the bottom.
All the way to the bottom.
Click on that. And then I usually end up finding like great stuff that I can use that I know is trustworthy. That somebody didn't just go in and be like, I hate Jews. Oh yeah. Okay, cool. She's dead.
Yeah.
Way to go. You don't need to tarnish her again.
I liked how enthusiastic she was, though. Like, her students would say, like, she would do her hair, like, really loosely. So, like, when she'd get all animated, like, her pins would start to fall out.
She really is, like, to me, it's just like this perfect nutty professor in my head, just kind of, like, wackadoo and funny. Like, I almost see Gilda Radner in my head.
But she really didn't like care about it though. She'd just be like, whatever. She's like, we're talking about this exciting stuff right here. Like, she was so about the ideas.
Yeah. Who cares about my hair? We're talking about math.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing her story. And remind me of her full name.
Amalie Emmy Noether.
Okay.
Which Amalie is a very pretty name.
It's such a pretty name.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. I'm glad you liked it.
I hope everybody appreciated all the work you did today.
I'm sorry I couldn't be better with the theories. Y'all, it was hard.
This is why I have not done like, I have put people on my list that are like mathematicians or like really, high level thinking scientists. And I'm like, I can't even talk about what they do because I don't even understand it.
Yeah, I did really try.
You did a much better job than I would have done because you took advanced calculus because you're a genius.
Yeah, but then I chipped my tooth on my lip ring eating pizza. That really did happen.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. And also thank you to Lucas McIntyre, our editor, for all of his hard work.
Also, big thanks to Jennifer Finch, who provides our lovely theme music.
Don't forget to check us out on Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can also send us an email. You can send us an old-fashioned mail if you DM us. Shout out actually to Amy Myers. She is one of our listeners and we've connected. She's also a booktuber and she has been taking some of the stuff we've talked about, some of the women we talked about, and made some pretty neat designs. So you can check her out. Her graphic design work is on Spill the Paint Creative. So definitely check her out on there.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, buy a bag with Elizabeth Parachovich's cool symbols on it.
Alrighty, till next time, folks.
Thank you, everyone. Did you just spit on
I
yourself?
spit on it.
Ew, I'm glad we all had COVID.
Okay. All right. Water droplets.